The courtroom camera captured something that would go viral and restore faith in justice. Karen Whitmore, a 48-year-old woman wearing designer sunglasses and holding a pristine white cane, stumbled dramatically through Judge Judy's courtroom doors, as if auditioning for a disability awareness ad. Her movements were almost theatrical, with exaggerated gestures and her head tilted in the way people expect blind individuals to hold themselves. What happened in the next 12 minutes would become one of the most shocking exposés of courtroom fraud ever shown on television, shared over 50 million times across social media. But here's what makes the story incredible. Karen didn't just get caught lying. She didn't just lose her case. What Judge Judy did to expose her fraud was so clever, so perfectly executed, that it involved a four-legged lie detector Karen never saw coming. Literally. Before diving into this takedown of one of the most arrogant disability fakers ever caught on camera, I need you to do something. Comment where you're watching from, and if you've ever encountered someone faking a disability for personal gain, hit subscribe, because what you're about to see will shock you. Judge Judy doesn't just defeat this faker. She humiliates her so completely and publicly that Karen's face becomes the poster child for courtroom fraud online. Trust me, the moment her lies collapse is the most satisfying justice you'll see all year. Karen Whitmore had walked into the courtroom believing she had the perfect scam. For 6 months, she had pretended to be suddenly blind, collecting disability payments, suing former employers, and living off the sympathy and settlements of people who believed her story. She had practiced her act for weeks, studying YouTube videos, buying the right accessories, perfecting that lost and helpless demeanor to make people feel guilty for questioning her. She filed a lawsuit against Barbara Chen, a small business owner, claiming Barbara fired her the moment she became disabled. Karen demanded $125,000 for disability discrimination, wrongful termination, and emotional distress. She had dollar signs in her eyes and a performance ready she believed would fool everyone, including Judge Judy. Barbara Chen, exhausted, sat in the defendant's chair. A 52-year-old who had poured her life savings into her accounting business, she had hired Karen as a bookkeeper 8 months earlier. Everything was fine until Karen claimed she was going blind from a rare condition Barbara had never heard of. Initially sympathetic, Barbara offered accommodations, but then odd things happened. Co-workers saw Karen driving in the parking lot. Security footage showed her navigating the office perfectly when she thought no one was watching. Karen claimed she couldn't read documents, but Barbara caught her scrolling through her phone, clearly reading. When confronted about inconsistencies, Karen threatened to sue for discrimination. 2 weeks later, Barbara received the lawsuit and had spent $12,000 on legal fees defending against what she knew was fraud. Judge Judy had reviewed the case for 2 days. Every instinct she had developed over 25 years in Manhattan family court screamed something was wrong. She had seen every scam, every fraud, every manipulator walk through her courtroom, but disability fraud was personal. Judge Judy had worked with genuinely disabled people who faced real challenges. The idea that someone would fake a disability for money, mocking those with real impairments, filled her with righteous anger. She had made calls, done investigating, and prepared something special for Karen Whitmore to expose her lies in the most humiliating, undeniable way. What Karen didn't know during her dramatic entrance was that Judge Judy had contacted the doctor listed on Karen's medical documents. She had reviewed security footage from Barbara's office and social media posts Karen thought deleted, and Judge Judy had arranged a special guest for the proceedings, someone who would prove beyond doubt that Karen could see perfectly. The trap was set, the cameras rolling, and Karen was about to learn that faking a disability in Judge Judy's courtroom carried consequences that would destroy her life on national television. The courtroom buzzed with the electric energy that always accompanied Judge Judy's most dramatic cases. The audience had settled into their seats. Production assistants completed their final checks, and the cameras focused on the peculiar scene unfolding at the plaintiff's table. Karen Whitmore was putting on the performance of her lifetime, fumbling with her papers in an exaggerated display of helplessness, accidentally knocking over a cup of water that splashed across the table. Gasping dramatically as if this minor spill were catastrophic, she turned her face toward where she assumed the cameras were positioned, her expression carefully crafted to convey brave suffering and dignified perseverance in the face of her alleged blindness. What she didn't notice was Judge Judy's eyes, Narrowing into that expression, regular viewers knew meant someone was about to be utterly destroyed. Judge Judy opened the proceedings with her signature no-nonsense approach, her voice cutting through the courtroom like a scalpel. Mrs. Whitmore, you're suing Miss Chen for $125,000, claiming she fired you because you became blind. Tell me about your condition. Karen took a deep breath, preparing to deliver the sob story she had rehearsed dozens of times in front of her bathroom mirror. Your Honor, 6 months ago my life changed forever. I woke up one morning and everything was just darkness. The doctors diagnosed me with a rare degenerative condition that destroyed my optic nerves. She paused for dramatic effect, her voice cracking with practiced emotion. I went from being an independent, successful professional to someone who couldn't even make coffee without help. Barbara fired me 3 weeks after my diagnosis. She claimed it was performance issues, but we all know the truth. She didn't want to deal with a disabled employee. The performance was almost impressive in its commitment to the lie. Karen gestured expansively as she spoke, occasionally reaching out as if trying to orient herself in space, her white cane leaning against her chair like a stage prop. She described in vivid detail the challenges of her new disabled life, how she had to learn to navigate her apartment, how simple tasks became insurmountable obstacles, how cruel the world had become to someone who couldn't see. Several audience members looked genuinely moved by her story, and Karen could feel the sympathy radiating from the gallery. Everything was going exactly as planned. Judge Judy sat perfectly still during the performance, hands folded on the bench, her expression unreadable. But anyone who knew her could see the subtle signs, the slight tension in her jaw, the way her eyes tracked every exaggerated gesture Karen made, the almost imperceptible shake of her head when Karen described medical details that didn't quite add up. When Karen finally finished her opening statement, Judge Judy turned her attention to Barbara Chen. Miss Chen, what's your response to these allegations? Barbara's voice shook slightly as she began to speak, the exhaustion of 6 months fighting this fraudulent lawsuit evident in every word. Your Honor, I want to be absolutely clear. I did not fire Karen because of any disability. I fired her because she was committing fraud. Barbara pulled out a thick folder of evidence, her hands trembling with a mix of anger and vindication. I have security footage from my office showing Karen navigating perfectly in complete darkness. I have witness statements from coworkers who saw her driving, reading, and using her phone without any assistive technology. I have social media posts from after her supposed blindness where she's clearly engaging in activities that require perfect vision. Karen's response was immediate and aggressive, her voice rising with indignation. That might have been convincing if Judge Judy hadn't already spotted 17 different lies in her initial paperwork. That footage is doctored. Those social media posts were scheduled before I went blind. Her voice sharpened, the victim persona slipping slightly. Your Honor, this is exactly the kind of discrimination disabled people face every day. Everyone assumes we're faking. Everyone questions our legitimacy. Just because I've learned to adapt doesn't mean I can see. Judge Judy leaned forward slightly, and the courtroom seemed to drop 10 degrees in temperature. Mrs. Whitmore, let's talk about your medical documentation. You submitted a letter from Dr. Michael Stevens, an ophthalmologist, confirming your diagnosis. Karen nodded confidently, adjusting her sunglasses with theatrical precision. Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Stevens has been treating me since my condition developed. He's a respected specialist in rare optical disorders. Judge Judy's smile was cold enough to freeze water. That's fascinating, Mrs. Whitmore, because I personally called Dr. Michael Stevens' office yesterday. The office manager informed me that Dr. Stevens retired 8 months ago and hasn't seen patients in over a year. She let that hang in the air like a guillotine waiting to drop. Would you like to revise your statement about who's been treating you? The color drained from Karen's face behind her designer sunglasses. She stammered slightly, her confident persona cracking. That must be a different Dr. Stevens. There are probably multiple ophthalmologists with that name in the area. Judge Judy's expression could have cut glass. The doctor's signature on your letter matches the retired Dr. Stevens' signature exactly. I had a handwriting expert compare it to his genuine medical documents. Your letter is a forgery, Mrs. Whitmore. A very poor forgery. The courtroom atmosphere shifted from sympathetic curiosity to hostile suspicion in a matter of seconds. Karen Whitmore sat frozen in her chair, her carefully constructed facade beginning to crumble like a sandcastle against the tide. But she wasn't ready to give up her performance yet. She had invested too much in this scam. Too much money already collected from disability payments. Too many other lawsuits pending against former employers who had also questioned her convenient blindness. She doubled down with desperate intensity. "Your Honor, I don't know what kind of investigation you think you've conducted, but I am genuinely blind. Perhaps there was a mix-up with the doctor's office. Perhaps my medical records were mishandled. But I can assure you that my condition is absolutely real and absolutely devastating to my quality of life." Judge Judy wasn't buying a single word. "Mrs. Whitmore, let's conduct a simple test. I'm going to ask you to demonstrate how you use your white cane to navigate unfamiliar spaces. This is a standard mobility technique that every blind individual learns during rehabilitation. Please show the court how you would use your cane to walk from your current position to the defendant's table." Karen's hands tightened on the cane, her mind racing to remember the YouTube video she had watched about proper cane technique. She stood slowly, making a show of disorientation, and began tapping the cane in front of her with broad, sweeping gestures that looked more like she was sweeping a floor than navigating space. Judge Judy watched with the clinical detachment of a scientist observing a failed experiment. "Mrs. Whitmore, that's not remotely how mobility canes are used. You're holding it like a broom. Genuine blind individuals use a specific rhythmic arc pattern that allows them to detect obstacles before physical contact. What you're doing is theatrical nonsense," the audience murmured, realizing they were witnessing an elaborate fraud collapse in real time. Karen's performance grew more frantic, more exaggerated, as if increasing the drama could somehow make her lies believable. She stumbled deliberately, reaching for the table edge, her breathing theatrical and labored. "This is so humiliating, Your Honor. Having to prove my disability to people who refuse to believe me. This is exactly why disabled people suffer in silence, rather than seeking the accommodations and justice they deserve." Her voice carried that perfect mix of righteous indignation and wounded dignity that had worked on every other authority figure she had encountered. But Judge Judy wasn't every other authority figure. Judge Judy had been exposing manipulative liars long before Karen was born. This particular brand of fraudulent victimhood made her blood boil with righteous fury. Judge Judy pulled out another document from her folder, holding it up for the cameras. "Mrs. Whitmore, I'd like to discuss your social media activity, specifically some Instagram posts from 3 weeks ago." Karen's body language shifted instantly. Her shoulders tensed, betraying sudden panic. "I don't use social media anymore. It's too difficult without being able to see the screen." Judge Judy's smile was predatory and merciless. "Really? Because these posts show you at a shooting range in Henderson, Nevada. The photographs clearly show you aiming a handgun at targets downrange. There are multiple shots of you hitting bullseyes at 25 yards. Tell me, Mrs. Whitmore, how does a completely blind woman aim and fire a weapon with that level of accuracy?" The courtroom fell silent. Even Karen seemed to realize she had just been caught in an undeniable lie. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, her brain desperately trying to manufacture an explanation for photographic evidence of her perfect vision. "Those photos are old. They must have been posted by mistake. My account was hacked," she stammered, excuses tumbling out rapidly, each more desperate and less believable than the last. Judge Judy cut through the babbling with surgical precision. "The metadata on these images shows they were taken 3 weeks ago. The geotag places you in Nevada. The timestamp matches credit card receipts from the shooting range in your name. You were in Nevada 3 weeks ago, shooting targets with perfect accuracy while simultaneously collecting disability payments in California for your supposed blindness. That's fraud, Mrs. Whitmore. That's criminal fraud." Karen's voice rose to a near shriek, her victim persona completely abandoned. Karen's defensiveness took over. "You don't understand medical conditions, Judge. You clearly don't know anything about disability law. Maybe if you actually educated yourself instead of just being a TV judge who thinks she knows everything, you'd understand that blind people can still do things." The courtroom went silent. Karen had committed the cardinal sin of Judge Judy's courtroom. She had insulted the judge's intelligence, questioned her legal expertise, and dismissed her authority in front of millions of viewers. Judge Judy's expression transformed from skeptical to glacial. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Her voice, when she spoke, carried the weight of decades of legal experience and zero tolerance for entitled fraud. "Miss Whitmore, you just made the biggest mistake of your life. But before I rule on this case, I have one more test I'd like to conduct. A test that will prove beyond any shadow of a doubt whether you can see or not. And trust me, this test is foolproof. Bailiff, please bring in our special guest. The courtroom door opened, and what walked through would change everything. A beautiful golden retriever entered, her coat gleaming under the courtroom lights, her brown eyes intelligent and alert. She wore a professional service dog vest with official courthouse certification tags and moved with the confident grace of a dog trained to the highest standards. This was Bailey, about to become the most famous dog in internet history. The handler walked Bailey to the front of the courtroom. Judge Judy's expression softened slightly as she acknowledged the dog with a subtle nod. For those watching at home, she announced, her voice carrying the authority of someone conducting a scientific experiment. I'd like to introduce Bailey. Bailey is a certified service dog who works with our court system. She's specifically trained to assist individuals with visual impairments in navigating courthouse environments. We use her for demonstrations and assistance when needed. Karen's entire body language shifted the instant the dog entered. Her shoulders went rigid, her breathing became shallow and rapid, picked up clearly by the sensitive courtroom microphones. Her head turned slightly, tracking the dog's movement with precision impossible for someone genuinely blind. She tried to maintain her performance, keeping her face tilted in that supposedly sightless manner, but her body betrayed her in countless tiny ways that Judge Judy catalogued with predatory focus. The audience sensed something incredible was about to happen. This wasn't just another piece of evidence or document. This was unprecedented, exposing Karen's fraud in a way that could not be explained away. Judge Judy continued with clinical precision. Mrs. Whitmore, since you claim to be completely blind and unable to navigate spaces without assistance, I'm going to have Bailey help you walk from the plaintiff's table to my bench. This is a standard accommodation we provide for individuals with visual impairments during court proceedings. Bailey is trained to guide safely and effectively. Karen's voice rose higher than before, carrying an edge of barely controlled panic. I don't need a dog, Your Honor. I have my cane. I've learned to navigate with my cane. Judge Judy's smile was merciless. Humor me, Mrs. Whitmore. Consider this a demonstration of how we accommodate disabled individuals in our courthouse. Surely you have no objection to accepting help specifically designed for people with your condition. The handler began walking Bailey slowly toward Karen. The dog moved calmly and professionally, completely focused on her task. But Karen's reaction was anything but calm. Her eyes, hidden behind designer sunglasses, tracked the dog's approach. She shifted her weight backward, away from the animal. Her hands gripped the edge of the table so tightly her knuckles turned white. Judge Judy's voice cut through the tension like a blade. Mrs. Whitmore, Bailey is approaching you from the right side. Since you claim to be completely blind, you shouldn't be able to know that without hearing her movements or being told her position. Karen stammered desperately. I can sense her presence. Blind people develop heightened other senses. I can feel the air movement or something. Judge Judy raised an eyebrow skeptically. Air movement in a climate-controlled courtroom. How convenient. Bailey reached Karen's position and sat directly in front of her, perfectly blocking her path. The handler gave a quiet command and Bailey remained absolutely still. A living obstacle that any genuinely blind person would need to detect through a cane or careful forward feeling. Judge Judy issued her next instruction, with the precision of someone conducting a crucial experiment. Mrs. Whitmore, please walk toward my bench. Bailey will remain where she is. Use whatever navigation technique you normally use. Karen stood slowly, white cane extended in front of her with exaggerated caution. She began tapping the cane in broad, sweeping motions that had already revealed her ignorance of proper technique. But then something happened that Karen couldn't fake. As she approached Bailey, she smoothly adjusted her path to walk around the dog. She didn't bump into Bailey. She didn't use her cane to detect an obstacle. She simply walked around the dog with the visual precision of someone who could see exactly where the animal was positioned. Judge Judy pounced on the moment. Mrs. Whitmore, how did you know Bailey was sitting directly in your path? You adjusted your walking direction before your cane would have detected her presence. You navigated around her with perfect spatial awareness. Karen's face flushed behind her sunglasses. Her voice grew defensive and frantic. I heard her breathing. I sensed her. This is ridiculous. Why are you attacking me instead of focusing on the discrimination I suffered? Judge Judy's response was ice cold and final. Because you're not blind, Mrs. Whitmore. and I'm about to prove it in a way that will leave absolutely no doubt in anyone's mind. Bailiff, hand me that tennis ball from my chambers. What happened next would be replayed millions of times online. The bailiff retrieved a bright yellow tennis ball and handed it to Judge Judy. Karen stood frozen, her lies closing in around her like walls of a collapsing prison. Judge Judy held the ball in her hand, turning it slowly so the courtroom cameras could capture it clearly. The fluorescent lights made the ball almost glow against the dark wood of the judge's bench. Karen Whitmore stood near the center of the courtroom, her white cane clutched in one hand, her designer sunglasses still firmly in place, her entire body radiating the tension of someone who knew the trap was closing but couldn't escape. The audience sat in complete silence, sensing they were about to witness something extraordinary. Judge Judy's voice carried across the courtroom with perfect clarity. Mrs. Whitmore, I'm going to conduct one final test. A test that genuine blind individuals fail every time because they cannot see objects moving through space. A test that will prove conclusively whether you have vision or not. Karen's voice came out strangled and panicked. Your Honor, this is unnecessary. I've already provided medical documentation. This is harassment of a disabled person. Judge Judy's smile was colder than a Montana winter. Your forged medical documentation. You mean the documentation from a retired doctor who hasn't practiced in 8 months? Without warning or preparation, Judge Judy tossed the tennis ball directly at Karen. It wasn't a gentle toss. It was a firm throw with enough speed that anyone would instinctively react to protect themselves. The ball sailed in a perfect arc, captured from multiple camera angles heading straight for Karen's head. Then it happened. Karen's hands shot up with lightning-fast reflexes. Her arms moved with the precise coordination of someone with perfect vision, tracking a moving object through three-dimensional space. Her fingers opened at exactly the right millisecond, and she caught the ball cleanly, with the hand-eye coordination of someone who could see perfectly. The courtroom exploded. The audience gasped in collective shock. Barbara Chen's mouth fell open in vindication. The bailiff actually stepped back in surprise, and Karen Whitmore stood frozen like a statue. The bright yellow tennis ball, clutched in both hands, her designer sunglasses still on her face, provided irrefutable evidence of her perfect vision, captured from 6 different camera angles in crystal clear high definition. For 3 full seconds, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The only sounds were the quiet hum of the courtroom's air conditioning and the faint whir of cameras capturing every detail of Karen's absolute destruction. Then, Karen seemed to realize what she had just done. The color drained from her face so completely she looked as if she might faint. Her hands began to shake, the tennis ball trembling between her fingers. She tried to speak, opening and closing her mouth, but no words came out. She had just provided undeniable proof that she could see perfectly. Judge Judy's voice cut through the stunned silence like an executioner's blade, measured and merciless. Mrs. Whitmore, would you like to explain to this court how a completely blind woman just caught a ball thrown at her face? Better yet, let's discuss how you tracked that ball's movement from my hand to yours with absolutely perfect hand-eye coordination. The kind that requires functional vision, working optic nerves, and a brain that can process visual information in real time. Karen's response was pure desperation, the flailing of someone drowning in their own lies. That was a reflex. That was just instinct. Anyone would have done that. Their hands would have just come up automatically. Judge Judy leaned forward, her expression withering in contempt. Mrs. Whitmore, blind people do not catch balls thrown at them. Blind people cannot track moving objects through space. Blind people cannot coordinate their hand movements with perfect precision to intercept an object they cannot see. What you just demonstrated is called visual motor coordination, and it requires sight. The dam broke completely. Karen ripped off her sunglasses with shaking hands, revealing eyes that were perfectly normal, pupils dilating appropriately to the courtroom lights. No cloudiness, no damage, no sign of the degenerative condition she had claimed destroyed her optic nerves. Tears began streaming down her face. But these weren't the practiced crocodile tears of her victim performance. These were real tears of fear and humiliation. Your Honor, please. I can explain. I made a mistake. I was desperate. I lost my job and I needed money, and I just thought... Judge Judy's voice rose with righteous fury, cutting through Karen's pathetic excuses like a sword through paper. You thought you could fake a disability and get rich. You thought you could mock people with real visual impairments by pretending to be blind. You thought you could manipulate the system, exploit sympathy, and destroy innocent business owners like Barbara Chen, who did absolutely nothing wrong except catch you in your fraud. Judge Judy pulled out yet another folder, thicker than all the previous evidence combined. Let's talk about the full scope of your criminal enterprise, Mrs. Whitmore. Because this isn't your first fraudulent disability lawsuit, is it? Karen's eyes widened with horror as Judge Judy began reading from documents detailing 6 months of systematic fraud. You filed 4 separate lawsuits against 4 different employers, all claiming the same sudden blindness, all demanding 6-figure settlements. You've been collecting disability payments from Social Security for 6 months. Payments meant for people with genuine disabilities who actually need assistance. You've been parking in handicapped spaces with a fraudulent placard. You've been collecting accommodations and benefits while living a completely normal-sided life. Judge Judy's voice grew harder with each revelation. The total amount you've stolen through this scam is approximately $87,000. That's not civil fraud, Mrs. Whitmore. That's criminal fraud. That's theft. That's a conspiracy. That's forgery of medical documents. Karen had collapsed into her chair, sobbing uncontrollably, her entire world crumbling in real time on national television. Everything she had built through months of lies was being destroyed in minutes. Her bank accounts would be frozen. Her disability payments would be revoked. She would face criminal charges that could send her to prison for years. And worst of all, her face, her name, and her humiliating exposure would be shared millions of times across the internet, making her the most hated fraud in America. Judge Judy delivered her ruling with the finality of a guillotine blade. Mrs. Whitmore, judgment for the defendant. Your case is dismissed with prejudice. You will pay Barbara Chen $5,000 for her legal fees and the time she wasted defending herself against your fraudulent lawsuit. Furthermore, I am ordering the bailiff to contact the district attorney's office immediately. You will be facing criminal charges for disability fraud, insurance fraud, forgery, and perjury. The consequences came swiftly and mercilessly. Within hours of the episode airing, the clip of Karen catching the tennis ball went viral across every social media platform. 50 million views, 100 million. The numbers kept climbing as people shared the moment of perfect justice, the undeniable exposure of an arrogant fraud. Hashtags trended worldwide. Fake blind Karen, Bailey the hero, Judge Judy Justice. Disability rights advocates praised Judge Judy for exposing fraud that hurt people with genuine disabilities. Real blind individuals shared their outrage at Karen's mockery of their daily challenges. The district attorney filed 17 counts of fraud against Karen Whitmore. She faced up to 10 years in prison and mandatory restitution of every dollar she had fraudulently collected. Her other pending lawsuits collapsed immediately as her fraud became public knowledge. Barbara Chen's business recovered and thrived, and she became an advocate for small business owners facing frivolous lawsuits. Bailey the golden retriever became an internet sensation, with fan accounts and appreciation posts flooding social media. Judge Judy received thousands of messages thanking her for the most satisfying moment of courtroom justice ever captured on television. Karen Whitmore ultimately pleaded guilty to multiple fraud charges and was sentenced to 3 years in prison, along with full restitution. Her mugshot became a cautionary tale shared in ethics classes and fraud prevention seminars. She lost everything because she thought she could fake a disability for profit and get away with it. But she forgot one crucial thing. Judge Judy doesn't play games with frauds who mock people with real disabilities. This story proves something that every entitled scammer needs to understand. You cannot fake your way through life and expect to avoid consequences forever. Karen thought she was clever. She thought her performance was good enough to fool everyone. She thought the system was too broken to catch her. But she was wrong about all of it. Real justice requires people like Judge Judy. Judges who refuse to let fraud succeed, who investigate thoroughly, and who care more about truth than sympathy. And sometimes justice comes with 4 legs, a wagging tail, and the ability to expose lies that humans tried to hide. Faking a disability isn't just fraud. It's an insult to every person who actually lives with real challenges every day. It's theft from systems designed to help people who genuinely need support. It's a mockery of human suffering for personal profit. Karma, as this story demonstrates, isn't just real. It has perfect timing, works for Judge Judy, and sometimes comes in the form of a golden retriever and a tennis ball. Karen's downfall serves as a lasting reminder. Don't be a Karen, don't fake disabilities. Don't commit fraud. Eventually, you'll face someone who actually cares about truth and justice. and your lies will come crashing down in the most public and humiliating way imaginable. This is the story of how Bailey the dog became a hero and Karen the fraud became a cautionary tale. Justice isn't just served, it's served with a side of viral humiliation that lasts forever.